The sun hung mercilessly over Lagos in that dry January heat, the kind that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt and turns every breath into a small negotiation with survival. Emmanuel wiped his forehead with the sleeve of his faded security guard uniform and shifted the nylon bag in his hand. Inside was jollof rice still steaming in a small stainless steel flask, 2 pieces of fried fish, and a single can of maltina he had saved from his own lunch money. It was the 3rd time this month he had walked the 7 kilometers from the bank, where he worked nights, to the glass-fronted insurance building in Victoria Island, where Chioma now sat behind a desk as a senior claims officer. He had not told her he was coming. He wanted to see the surprise on her face, the way her eyes would light up the way they did the first year they got married, when every small gesture still felt like magic. 8 years and 2 children later, the magic had thinned, but Emmanuel still believed it could be coaxed back to life. The security men at the gate knew him now. They waved him through with lazy salutes and jokes about Ogo wife pampering. He took the elevator to the 5th floor, rehearsing the smile he would give her, the quiet pride he felt that he could still do something like this on a salary that barely covered school fees. The office floor was quieter than usual. Most of the staff had gone for Friday prayer or early lunch. Emmanuel walked past rows of empty cubicles until he saw the frosted glass door with her name on it, Chioma Okafor, Senior Claims Manager. The blinds were half drawn. He knocked softly, twice, the way he always did at home. No answer. He pushed the door gently. It wasn't locked. The first thing he noticed was a smell, expensive perfume, not the sweet sensation body spray she usually wore. Then he saw the shoes, shiny black leather, Italian, the kind that cost more than his monthly salary, kicked off carelessly near the foot of her desk. One of Chioma's high heels lay toppled beside them like a fallen soldier. She was bent over the desk, her back to him, blouse unbuttoned to the waist, skirt hiked high. The man behind her had his trousers pulled at his ankles, one hand gripping her waist, the other pressed flat against the desk for leverage. The rhythm was practiced, almost bored, as if this were routine. Emmanuel stood frozen in the doorway, the nylon bag slipping from his fingers. The flask hit the carpeted floor with a dull thud, the lid popping open. Jollof rice spilled across the gray carpet like fresh blood. Chioma turned first. Her scream was small, more gas than sound. The man, tall, light-skinned, late 30s, gold watch glinting, spun around, scrambling to pull up his trousers. Emmanuel knew the face instantly. Everyone in Lagos knew that face. Richard Adeko, executive director, the man whose picture was plastered on billboards across the city with slogans about securing your tomorrow. Chioma clutched her blouse closed, eyes wide with animal panic. "Emma, it's not, please." Richard found his voice first. Smooth even now. "Security," he barked, as if Emmanuel were the intruder. Who let this man in here? Emmanuel didn't move. He looked at the rice spreading across the carpet, at the single piece of fish that had rolled under Chioma's desk, at the can of maltina lying on its side, brown liquid fizzing out like the last breath of something dying. Chioma dropped to her knees in the spilled food, reaching for him. "Emma, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. He forced me. The promotion, the school fees, everything. I didn't have a choice." Richard was already straightening his tie, stepping over her as if she were part of the mess on the floor. "Listen, my friend," he said, voice dripping with the kind of condescension that comes from never having been poor. "This is a private matter. Take your food and go. I can make things very difficult for you." Emmanuel finally looked up. His eyes were dry. Too dry. The kind of dry that comes before something breaks. He bent down slowly, picked up the can of maltina, and took a long drink. Then he looked at Chioma, really looked at her, for the first time since he walked in. "You told me last week the company gave you a clothing allowance," he said quietly. "That's why you came home with new Brazilian hair. You said it was a bonus." Chioma's mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Richard reached for his phone. "I'm calling security." Emmanuel smiled then. It was not a nice smile. "No need," he said. "I am security." He stepped forward, past Chioma still on her knees in the jollof, and stopped inches from Richard Adeko. Up close, the man smelled of cedarwood cologne and fear. "You know," Emmanuel said conversationally, My shift at the bank starts at 10 tonight. I watch the CCTV all night. Rich men like you come and go. They park their big cars in the basement. Sometimes they leave their wives waiting upstairs for hours. Sometimes those wives cry in the bathroom when they think no one is looking. Richard's face drained of color. Emmanuel leaned in until their noses almost touched. I know which car is yours. Black G-Wagon. Plate number Rich 1. I know you park on the same spot every Friday night when you tell your wife you're at the club. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, an old Techno with a cracked screen, and held it up. The camera was already recording. Smile, he said softly. Richard lunged for phone. Emmanuel sidestepped easily, the way he learned to move when drunk customers got rowdy at the bank. Richard stumbled, caught the edge of the desk, and a heavy glass award for Executive of the Year toppled and shattered across the floor. Chioma screamed again. Emmanuel looked down at her, at the woman he had carried across the threshold of their one-room in Adjugunal, the woman who had cried in his arms when their first son had malaria and they couldn't afford the drugs, the woman who had whispered, "I love you," just yesterday morning. Stand up, he told her. She didn't move. I said stand up. She rose slowly, clutching her blouse, rice grains clinging to her stockings. Emmanuel reached past her and picked up the nameplate from her desk, Chioma Okafor, Senior Claims Manager. He turned it over in his hands like he was seeing it for the first time. Then he looked at Richard, who was now backed against a window, 35 floors above the Lagos traffic. Here's what's going to happen, Emmanuel said, voice calm, almost gentle. You're going to sit down and write my wife a resignation letter, effective immediately. Then you're going to pay her full severance. 12 months, plus the bonus she would have gotten next quarter. Richard opened his mouth to protest. Emmanuel raised the phone. Or this video goes to your wife, and your board, and Linda at KG, and every blog that will pay me for it. By tomorrow morning, your children will see their father trending for all the wrong reasons. Silence stretched across the office like a held breath. Richard sat down. Chioma was crying now, silent tears cutting tracks through the makeup she had applied so carefully that morning. Emmanuel looked at her for a long moment. You and I, he said, we're going home now. We're going to sit our children down and figure out how to explain to them why their mother won't be coming to PDA meetings anymore. And then he paused, the weight of 8 years pressing down on his chest. Then we're going to decide if there's anything left to save. He turned toward the door, stepping carefully around the spilled rice. Behind him, Richard's pen scratched across paper like a small animal trying to dig its way out of a trap. Emmanuel didn't look back. Not yet. The elevator ride down was silent, except for the soft ding of passing floors and the wet sound of Chioma's crying. She stood 3 feet away from him, arms wrapped around herself as if the air conditioning might tear her apart. Emmanuel kept his eyes on the numbers counting down. 5, 4, 3, watching them the way he once watched the clock at 6 a.m., waiting for the night shift to end so he could go home and kiss his sleeping children on the forehead. The nylon bag was gone, left upstairs like evidence. He still tasted Maltina at the back of his throat. Ground floor. The door slid open. The lobby was full of Friday people, staff rushing out to beat traffic, others coming back from lunch with takeaway packs balanced on their palms. A few heads turned. Someone recognized Chioma, started to smile, then saw her face. The rice grain still stuck to her skirt, the mascara bleeding down her cheeks, and looked away fast. Emmanuel walked straight through them. He did not hold her hand. She followed 2 steps behind like a stranger. Outside, the heat slapped them again. The security men at the gate saw them coming and went suddenly busy with their logbooks. One tried to joke. Madam, wouldn't happen? But Emmanuel's stare shut him up mid-laugh. He flagged down an Okada. The rider took one look at Chioma's ruined makeup and Emmanuel's dead calm face and decided not to negotiate the price. They climbed on, Chioma in the middle, her body pressed against Emmanuel's back because there was nowhere else to go. The bike roared off toward Third Mainland Bridge. Wind whipped her hair across his cheek. He smelled the expensive perfume again, mixed now with sweat and fear. She was shaking so hard the rider kept glancing back. Halfway across the bridge, traffic slowed to a crawl. Container trucks belched black smoke. Hawkers moved between lanes selling cold drinks and phone chargers. Emmanuel stared at the lagoon far below, black and glittering like spilled oil. He remembered the day he proposed to her on Carter Bridge, how she had laughed and said yes before he even finished the question. That day the water had looked almost blue. Chioma's voice came small against his ear. "Emma, please talk to me." He didn't answer. The bike dropped him at the bus stop near their estate in Adjugunal. Children were playing football in the sandy yard, barefoot, shouting in pidgin. Their own sons, Chuka and Kamsi, were among them, 8 and 6 years old, identical gap-toothed smiles. When they saw their parents, they came running. "Daddy, you came home early." Emmanuel crouched and opened his arms. The boys crashed into him, smelling of dust and sweat and childhood. He held them longer than usual, face buried in their small necks, breathing them in like medicine. Chioma stood apart, trying to smile. Chuka looked at her and frowned. "Mummy, why are you crying?" "I'm not crying," she said too quickly. Something flew into my eye. Kamsi tugged Emmanuel's uniform. "Daddy, did you bring biscuits?" Emmanuel shook his head. "Not today." The boys' faces fell. Then Chuka brightened. "That's okay. Ani Ngozi gave us groundnut yesterday." Emmanuel stood. The weight of the day settled back on his shoulders. He looked at Chioma. "Bathroom. Now, wash your face. Change that skirt. Then we talk." She nodded and hurried inside their 2-room flat. The boys dragged him to see a new goal they had scored. He let them talk, nodding in the right places, but his mind was already inside the house, inside the years, inside the small betrayals that had piled up like dirt under a rug until the day someone finally lifted the rug. Chioma came out 20 minutes later, wearing an old wrapper and one of his T-shirts, face scrubbed raw. The children had gone back to football. Neighbors pretended not to watch from behind curtains. They sat on the narrow balcony that overlooked the yard. Between them was a small plastic table where they sometimes ate when Nipa gave light, and the heat inside became unbearable. Emmanuel placed his phone on the table, screen down. Chioma stared at it like it might bite her. "Did you send a video to anyone?" "Not yet." She let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. "You're enjoying this, ABI? You want me to beg?" He looked at her steadily. "Do you want to beg?" She wiped her face with the edge of the wrapper. "Emma, I made a mistake. One mistake. 8 years, 2 children, and you're ready to throw everything away because of one afternoon." "One." He almost smiled. "Chioma, how long?" She looked away. "Tell me." 7 months, she whispered. The number landed between them like a live grenade. 7 months, he repeated. "The same 7 months you started coming home late. The same 7 months you said the company sent you for training in Abuja 3 times. The same 7 months our son had malaria, and you were too busy to go to the hospital with me." Tears again, but quieter now. "I was ashamed." "Ashamed." He tasted the word. "You brought him to our bed?" She flinched. "Never. I swear. Only the office. Sometimes hotels. Never our bed." He laughed then, a short, ugly sound that made a neighbor's curtain twitch. "Thank you for the respect. Emma, stop saying my name like it still belongs to you." Silence stretched. Somewhere down the street, a church started evening praise and worship, loudspeaker crackling. Chioma reached for his hand. He let her take it, curious what she would do. Her fingers were cold. "I can stop," she said. "Today. I already resigned. You heard him. I'll never see him again. We'll move if you want. Port Harcourt, Abuja, even Village. I'll delete his number, block him everywhere. We start again. Please." He looked at their joined hands. Her wedding ring was still there, white gold he had saved for 6 months to buy. He remembered the day he proposed, how she had cried happy tears. "Do you love him?" he asked. She hesitated 1 second too long. He pulled his hand away. "That's the problem, Chioma. It's not even the sex. It's that you hesitated." She started crying harder. Headlights swept across the yard. A black G-Wagon rolled slowly past the state gate, moving like it was looking for an address. Tinted windows. Rich one. It paused, engine idling, then moved on. Chioma saw it too. Her breath hitched. Emmanuel stood up. Pack a bag for the children. Enough for 1 week. We're leaving tonight. Where? My sister in Festac. She has space. Chioma stood too, clutching the wrapper. And us? After 1 week? I don't know. He walked inside to get the boys. Behind him, Chioma called his name once, softly, like a question she already knew the answer to. By 9 p.m., they were in a Danfo heading to Festac, the boys asleep against his chest. Chioma staring out the window at the city lights blurring past. Emmanuel's phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Then a text. Unknown. We need to talk. Name your price. R. He stared at the message for a long time. Then he opened the video he recorded upstairs, watched 30 seconds of it. Chioma's face twisted in pleasure, Richard's hand on her throat, and felt something inside him finally snap loose. He typed back with his thumb. Emmanuel, not for sale. But you'll pay. Just not with money. He pressed send, then turned the phone face down on his lap. The bus lurched across a pothole. One of the boys stirred, murmured, "Daddy," and settled again. Emmanuel looked out at the dark city rushing by and felt, for the first time in hours, something close to peace. Whatever came next, it would not be decided in Richard Adeko's office with jollof rice cooling on the carpet. It would be decided here, in the small places, on a crowded bus, in his sister's spare room, in the space between two wedding rings that suddenly weighed more than gold. The bus turned onto the expressway, gathering speed. Behind them, Lagos glittered like a promise someone had broken long ago. Ahead, the road was dark, but it was theirs. The weakened Festac crawled and flew at the same time. Emmanuel's sister, Ifioma, asked no questions, only pushed bowls of pepper soup toward him and took the boys to school every morning. Chioma slept on a mat in the parlor, woke before dawn to sweep the compound, pound yam, wash clothes by hand, anything to keep her body busy, so her mind would not eat her alive. She looked like a woman waiting for a verdict that might never come. On the sixth night, Emmanuel came home from the bank at 7 a.m. and found her sitting on the front steps with 2 cups of tea. She held one out. He took it. They drank in silence while the estate woke up around them, generators coughing to life, children reciting morning devotion, women shouting at husbands who had forgotten to drop money for soup. At last she spoke, voice hoarse from disuse. I went to see him yesterday. Emmanuel's cup stopped halfway to his lips. I told him I was pregnant. The cup trembled. Tea sloshed onto his knuckles. He set it down carefully. Is it mine? She met his eyes for the first time in days. I don't know. The words hung between them like smoke. I missed my period last week, she continued. I bought a test. 2 lines. I went to his house in Banana Island. I thought if I told him face to face, he would finally leave me alone. He laughed, Emma. He said, take care of it quietly and I'll add another $5 million to the severance. Then he offered me a glass of wine, like we were celebrating. Emmanuel felt the old rage rise, but it was different now. Colder, cleaner, the way a blade feels when it has been sharpened for one purpose only. Chioma's voice dropped to a whisper. I left the wine untouched. I left the house. I left everything. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small white bottle. Paracetamol, half empty. She placed it on the step between them. I sat on the bridge last night, she said. Third Mainland. I opened it. I counted every tablet. 24. I thought if I swallowed them all, the children would only have one parent to shame them instead of 2. Emmanuel's heart stopped. But I saw Kamsi's school shoes in my bag, she went on, tears sliding silently. The left one has a hole. I promised him new ones this Christmas. And I thought, even if you never forgive me, I still owe them a mother who is alive to fail them in smaller ways. She pushed the bottle toward him with one finger. I'm telling you everything now, because I have nothing left to hide behind. If you want me gone, I'll go. If you want me to stay and spend the rest of my life earning back 1 minute of trust at a time, I'll stay. But I will not let another man decide what my children lose next. A long silence. Somewhere a cock crowed, though it was nowhere near dawn. Emmanuel picked up the bottle, unscrewed the cap, and poured the remaining tablets into his palm. White, innocent, deadly. He closed his fists around them, then opened the gutter beside the step and let them fall one by one to the grate, listening to the tiny plinks as they disappeared into darkness. He looked at her, really looked, the woman he had loved since she was 19 and fearless, the woman who betrayed him in the worst way imaginable, the woman carrying a child that might or might not be his, the same woman. He exhaled 8 years in one breath. "Come inside," he said. She hesitated, afraid to believe. He stood and offered his hand. She took it. Her fingers were ice. They walked through the parlor where the boys still slept curled like puppies, into the small room Chioma had given them. He closed the door. Then, for the first time since the office, he pulled her into his arms. She broke against his chest the way a wave finally breaks against the shore it has been fighting for miles. He held her while she shook, while the tears soaked his uniform, while the city outside began its noisy day. When the storm passed, he cupped her face. "We are going to do 3 things," he said quietly. "First, you'll see a doctor tomorrow. We will know how far along. We will know everything. Second, we are moving out of Lagos before this baby is born. I have a cousin in Akure who manages a secondary school. He needs a vice principal and a good accounts teacher. The pay is small, but the air is clean and nobody knows our story. Third," he reached into his pocket and took out his phone. The video was still there. He held it so she could see the thumbnail, her own face twisted in ecstasy. "I am deleting this," he said, "not because he deserves mercy. Because we do." He pressed delete. Confirm. Gone. Chioma stared at the blank screen like it was a miracle. Emmanuel kissed her forehead, the way he used to when nightmares woke her years ago. "Poor thing," he whispered against her skin. "We're going to raise this child. Mine, his, ours, doesn't matter. Together, and every day for the rest of our lives. I will choose you again, not because the past disappeared, but because the future is bigger than the past. And I refuse to let any man, dead or alive, living in Banana Island or rotting in hell, steal my family twice." She cried again, but this time it sounded different, like rain on a tin roof after a long harmattan. 9 months later, in a small maternity clinic in Akure, a girl was born with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. They named her Adana, which means father's daughter, because Emmanuel was the first to carry her, the first to sing to her, the first to swear in front of God, and the tired midwife that no child would ever grow up believing love was something you beg for on your knees in spilled jollof rice. Years passed. The boys grew tall and loud and kind. They never knew the whole story, only that their parents once broke and decided on purpose to mend louder than they broke. Sometimes, late at night, Emmanuel would wake to find Chioma watching him in the dark. "What is it?" he would ask. "I'm still choosing you," she would answer. And he would pull her close, feel the steady beat of her heart against his, and know that forgiveness is not a single grand moment. It is 1,000 small ones, stacked like bricks until they build a house stronger than the one that fell. In Lagos, Richard Adeko's empire cracked slowly. Quiet audits, leaked emails, a wife who one day packed her bags and took the children to Canada without a backward glance. He never knew whose hand tipped the first domino. He only knew that somewhere, a night guard with steady eyes and a cracked technophone had decided some debts are paid not with money, but with the slow, inevitable gravity of a life rebuilt on the other side of shame. And somewhere in the hills of Ondo State, under a sky wide enough to hold every mistake ever made, a family ate dinner together every night. Jollof rice, fried fish, one can a Maltina share between 6 hands, laughter rising like smoke, love stubborn as ever, refusing to die. Because sometimes the worst betrayal is not the end. Sometimes it is only the place where the real story begins.